idea what it is.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a March 14th, 2006 meeting of the Howell Township Mayor and Council. It is our public participation meeting. I'd ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask that we all please remain standing for a moment, silent observation, and thoughts and prayers for the troops that are defending this country all across the globe. Thank you. Mr. Davis, would you please read the opening statement and call the roll?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this public participation meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on December 21st, 2005, and by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on December 21st, 2005, and by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's Office on December 21st, 2005. The public will be allowed to attend this meeting and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of the public laws of 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, they are to immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room to the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey.
Mr. Malave is sick. Spoke to him earlier today, so he's under the weather. He will not be here tonight.
Mrs. Showmaker.
Present.
Mr. Tabasco.
Present.
Mr. Walsh.
Present.
Mayor DeBella.
Here. Okay, we're going to deviate from the agenda for a moment and skip the order of things. I ask the members of the council to please join me down in the front. Good evening, everyone. I should say good firefighters from Ramtown. Tonight is a very special night in Howell Township. Every once in a while we have someone in our community that has done some extraordinary things and spent perhaps the better portion of their life giving themselves to some cause, some activity, something they were involved in. And we certainly have been blessed in this community by having a great many people who have done that. And we have one of those people here tonight who is moving on to the next phase of their life, having had a really wonderful and distinguished career and participation in Howell Township, one of our finest residents, Robert James Scheibel. Come on up, Mr. Scheibel. Mr. Scheibel and his family are moving to warmer climates, but it certainly was important to us that we appropriately recognize and pay tribute to his extraordinary accomplishments over a terrific career here in Howell Township. And I'm going to read a proclamation that is from the office of the mayor, and obviously it comes from all of the members of the council. And it reads, Robert James Scheibel, a community leader, a firefighter, and a gentleman. Whereas Robert James Bob Scheibel has been a resident of Howell Township for 38 years and has been an active community leader and volunteer throughout this time, serving in a variety of positions and capacities with great honor and distinction. And whereas Bob served his country admirably as a member of the United States Navy for 4 years. And whereas at a young age, Bob began a long and distinguished career as a firefighter, first with 6 years in Union Beach, New Jersey, and later with 36 years at the great Ramtown Fire Company No. 2. Over the course of his distinguished career in Ramtown, Bob held virtually every position within the fire service, first as a lieutenant, later as chief in 1975, 1976, and 1984. Bob has served the people of Ramtown and Howell Township with great distinction, bravery, and honor. In 1987, Bob served as president of the fire company, once again giving of himself and serving his fellow citizens. And whereas Bob has also held an elected position within the community as a 32-year directly elected fire commissioner in District 4. First elected in 1974, Bob has been elected to 11 successive terms in office, making him one of the longest-serving and most popular elected officials in township history. Over the course of his distinguished career as an elected official, Bob has served as clerk of the board, vice chairman, and as the district's representative to the executive board of the Joint Fire Commissioners, where he had responsibility for working and overseeing operations and management of the township's fire bureau. As commissioner, Bob worked tirelessly to ensure Ramtown was well protected and capable of dealing with any crisis. His leadership and experience have been an inspiration for a generation of other firefighters in the fire service, and his accomplishments and contributions to Ramtown will go down in township history as truly historic. And whereas Bob's service to Howell Township goes well beyond the fire service, Bob has been a member of the Howell Elks Lodge 2515 for 30 years. He served the Howell South Little League in a variety of positions, including team manager for 10 years, 1974 to 1984. He was also the league president in 1979 and 1980. As a proud, loving, and devoted father of two wonderful boys, Robert T. and Michael J., not only was he a coach, but he was their scout leader. In fact, 1986 to 1996, Bob was also active with Howell's Troops 515 and 519. As a scout leader, he was involved in helping his own son, Michael, attain scouting's highest honor, the rank of Eagle. Whereas Bob worked professionally for Jersey Central Power and Light for 37 years, retiring as chief lineman in 2003 so he could work to improve his golf game. Still working on it. Yeah, you're not alone. Whereas after 38 years of loyal, dedicated, and distinguished service to Howell Township, he and his lovely wife of 40 years, Margaret, are relocating to the warmer weather climates of Lady Lakes, Florida. In leaving Howell, Bob leaves behind a legacy of greatness and dedication to his community that is unmatched. He is respected and loved by his fellow citizens, and especially his fellow firefighters at the great Ramtown Fire Company No. 2 for their wonderful and decent man that he is. And now therefore be it resolved that in consideration of his extraordinary service to the people of Howell Township, that I, Joseph M. DeBella, Mayor of the Township of Howell, do hereby declare that Wednesday, March 15th, 2006, be declared the Honorable Robert James Scheibel Day throughout the Township of Howell, and that a copy of this proclamation be recorded with the Clerk of the Township as a permanent tribute to Bob for his lifelong commitment to Howell and the many historic achievements he has made. Howell Township is a better place because of the Scheibel family, and they shall always be welcome here in our community and revered for Bob's many years of service and accomplishments. And it's dated this day, March 14th, 2006, signed by myself, but certainly on behalf of Councilman Malave, Deputy Mayor Tabasco, Councilwoman Showmaker, and Councilman Walsh. We are greatly indebted. Congratulations.
Mayor, I'd like to thank you and the committee for taking this opportunity to honor me. My fellow firemen are here tonight. I thank them for coming. In my 38 years in Howell, when I first moved here, it was like 7,000, 8,000 people living here. And I was here to see the big growth and to be part of it, and I'll always remember that. And I always worked with a bunch of great guys, and from the police departments, the first aid squads, to road department guys, council. It's been a pleasure and to be part of it. And like I said, we're moving to Lady Lakes, Florida, Villages, because senior says a retirement place in the world. It's Disney World for old people, they call it. And like I say, I get my game into the low 80s, I'll let you know. I'm still flirting with the 90s and the 88s, but I get to 82, I'll consider that, a good job. But again, thank you very much for this honor.
Thank you. Well, when someone has the kind of record that you have had to this community, it's important we recognize and thank you, because there are very few people like you, and we're a lucky community to have had you for the time that we did. Good luck to you. Be safe.
Closing's supposed to be Friday. And I'm still knocking on wood on that because I never know what's going to happen. Mayor, we don't want to run, but we're going to run.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for being out here the rest of the day. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Joe.
Take care, Joe. Hey, you're 50 bucks. Good job. Come on, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. It was all you. I meant to say that. You knew where it was coming from? Wow. He gave me the
I moved to Manal, put in 64. Route 9 was one lane, Gord's Corner was a dirt road.
I mean it.
We had to go food shopping on Herndon Road up in Sayreville or shop right in Freehold.
Thank you for being here.
Howell wasn't even thought of back then.
Look at it, it's the metropolis.
Oh, thanks. I didn't even realize you were doing it at first.
You got to be recorded.
I know.
Mr. Mayor,
We're working on a new.
we have two requests, actually. Mr. Fisher from the
Yes.
New Jersey...
Joe mentioned to me.
Okay.
We're going to.
Authority, and Mr. Van Noy also has an engagement at 8:30 that he has to be at.
Terrific. Okay. We're going to, again, just slightly deviate from the agenda. We have Mr. Ray Fisher here from the New Jersey Department of Economic Development. I could be pronouncing the department wrong, but is Mr. Fisher here? Yes. Come on up, Mr. Fisher. If you wouldn't mind, sir, I'd, just by way of background, you could sit. It's probably a chair, right? Oh, if you want to hand those out, come on up, please. Mr. Fisher contacted my office via email and introduced himself and the services that his office provides through the state, the government, with economic development opportunities, and had recommended that he come here, thank you, and make a presentation to the entire Township Council on the services that are available through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So without further ado, Mr. Fisher, we welcome you. If you'd please just pull that microphone as close as you can, and the floor is yours for your presentation.
Good evening, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm from the government. I'm here to help, and I hope you're going to find me refreshingly brief. I handed out these information packages. We're going to focus primarily on the right side, but on the left side, you can see I prepared a list of all the projects that we've already done in Howell Township since the beginning of the EDA. There's only 37 of them. We'd like for them to be a lot more. But on the right side, the first page is New Jersey Economic Development Authority, your resource for economic opportunity. And this talks about how we've been around since 1974. We've helped over 8,000 businesses, provided over $16 billion in financing support. We have low-interest financing for businesses, not-for-profits, municipalities. We have some grant programs, which I'll talk about in just a minute. We do urban aid and smart growth redevelopment funding. We have grants and loans for brownfields. We have all kinds of financing, and I'm not here to present the whole thing tonight, but just to hit the major ones on the head. Also, we have a fairly good website, njeda.com. Visit that at any time. But we have low-cost, low-interest financing programs for businesses that are looking to expand and create jobs. And the next thing you might ask is, well, how do I get in on all this good stuff? And the next thing I got is our targeting list. In order to qualify for EDA assistance, generally a business has to either be in a targeted area or in a targeted industry, but most importantly, creating some jobs. You'll find that our assistance is tied towards, incrementally towards job creation. And if you look at the targeting list, under Monmouth County, there's Howell Township right there, and that's why I contacted the mayor's office via email. We set up this meeting. The EDA is entirely a self-supported organization. There are no taxpayer dollars that come into the EDA to support our operations, and we do have substantial resources, but they're not unlimited. And because of that, the overwhelming majority of our financing programs we participate with banks. And the next page that I gave you is the list of banks that we participate with. And you'll find that most of them are on there. Most of the major ones are on there. We do work with most of the banks throughout the state. Through our enabling legislation, the EDA is able to issue tax-exempt bond financing, which is a very attractive vehicle for financing, and that's designated primarily towards manufacturers and not-for-profit organizations. And the next 2 pages I brought along deal with those type of scenarios. We also have various programs for redevelopment. There are smart growth pre-development financing. We have financing for brownfields, hazardous discharge. I brought along the information for that. But I think one of the most important things I want to say is as with any kind of government financing, it's important to get us in early. Call us early. There's some bells and whistles involved with this type of financing, and you can always give us a call, run it past us, see if it's anything that we think might work, and we'll be able to let you know right away. But please call us early. And one of the most popular phone calls we always get is, well, where can I get grant money? I want to start a business. Where can I get grant money? There is really no grant money available to start businesses at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. But one of the attractive programs that we have, and that's the next page here, is our Business Employment Incentive Program. And under this program, businesses that are looking to relocate into New Jersey or to expand can get up to 80% of the new payroll taxes paid by their employees for up to 10 years in the form of a grant every year. Being as Howell Township is a targeted community, it makes it easier for that company to get closer to the 80%, because I said it's up to 80% of the new payroll taxes paid back in the form of a grant every year. So if you're trying to attract businesses to Howell, this is something you might want to know about. And the rest of what I brought along is kind of miscellaneous, but we do have a program called Technium. If you know of any technology companies that are looking to get started, this is for very early stage types of technology businesses. They traditionally can't get financing anywhere else. A bank won't touch them with an 11-foot pole. And so this is a good opportunity for technology companies to be able to get financing. I also brought along this information on New Jersey Clean Energy Program. This is one that we administer for the Board of Public Utilities. The solar is getting very popular anymore. I see this program picking up a lot of speed. Business owners come back and tell us they really like it when they can take a look at their electric meter and the thing's spinning backwards. So we do a lot of them.
Joe Parente.
Yeah.
There you go. And the last thing I brought along was just our preliminary application. It's a one-page form. It's I don't really need this, but it can be handy. And I've also left a bunch of these here on the table with our bank list, preliminary application, targeting list, and the general information sheet. For businesses that are looking to expand, we can also we try to make our shop as one stop as possible. There are customized training grants available from the Department of Labor, where a business that needs to train their new employees can get up to 50% of those training costs back for up to 6 months. We also work closely with the New Jersey Commerce and Economic Growth Commission with their certification program for small business and women-owned enterprises to get them certified to take advantage of those programs. We also have, for startup businesses, we have an Entrepreneurial Training Institute. That's a course that runs for a series of weeks. They meet nightly. Individuals that are looking to start their own business can take advantage of the resources that we have available. We assist them with putting their business plan together. At the end of that, they come in and present to a group of business professionals as what's known as a panel review. And at the end of that, for those projects that make it through, we bring in a bunch of bankers, and they go through what's known as a panel review and lenders roundtable, where the bankers almost actually bid on who they want to lend to these new small businesses. So that's something that we have that's exciting for people that are just starting out. In addition to the tax-exempt bond financing, we have a number of commercial loan programs available as well that provide credit enhancement, and that's particularly important to banks and that they're looking at a marginal credit and are not really sure what they can do. And a good example of that would be for a business that was looking to come in and borrow $400,000, and the bank was looking at it and say, well, gee, we think that's a lot of money. We're not sure if we can lend that much. What can we do? But it's a business that's, let's say it's a printing business. They need to purchase some new equipment because they took out a new contract. and it looks like they're going to have to hire some employees, and the bank is thinking, well, $400,000, that's a lot for this guy. And he's scratching his head, but then he thinks, well, wait a minute, that EDA guy was in here not too long ago, and he was talking about how they can help if a business is looking to create some new jobs. And for $400,000, what we can do under the statewide loan pool program, which is one of our more popular programs, is I can consider putting in 25% of that, or $100,000, usually in a subordinate position, at a cheap interest rate. So that's a double-edged sword. One is I reduce the bank's exposure from 400 down to 3. The other is by me putting in $100,000 at a cheaper rate, maybe if the cash flow is tight, the payment might have been around $1,000 a month, but with my cheap money in there, it's going to be $900 a month. So the bank is even happier there. Enhanced cash flow, less risk. Further, I can consider doing a 25% guarantee in the bank's remainder. The remainder is $300,000 after I already put in my one. 25% of that is $75,000. So I've taken the bank from 400 down to 300, down to 225. Understand that the $75,000 guarantee that I put in is transparent to the applicant. The participation in the cheap rate is not. But in any event, I've helped the bank go from 400 down to 225. So if the bank was scratching its head at 400, it's going to be a lot happier at 225. And we have a bunch of different programs. And once again, I'll say this again. I hope I won't say it too many more times. It's important to call us and get us in early. We can tell right away whether we think a deal is going to work. If we got an advertising agency that wants to refinance a high-end lease they have on a copy machine to improve their cash flow, but they're not going to create any jobs, that's not going to work. We love not-for-profits. We like manufacturers. We like job creation. We like public purpose, YMCAs, and any type of that financing. And please, of course, feel free to visit our website. It's fairly comprehensive. There's case studies on there, there's histories, there's press releases, things we've done, how we've helped people, what the situation was, and how we were able to assist. And it's usually at this point where I say to myself, what am I forgetting? And I'm really not sure if I am. Is that a red seat? Is that Commerce Bank?
Yeah, I meant to take it off. I shouldn't have it up.
All right,
Shouldn't have it on while I'm up here. That's my job
Well,
that actually pays the bills.
Yeah, we do an awful lot with them.
Please don't tell me that while I'm up here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I used to work there too, so
Any questions from members of the council?
certainly.
One of the things that caught my eye right away, we happen to have this year tasked ourselves with possibly considering remediating a couple of sites in town that have been problematic for a good number of years. One of them is the Frequency Engineering Laboratory site, which you may or may not know about, and the other is the WDI former landfill site. And in both of those, when I spoke to professionals who we have actually hired to possibly look into what we might be able to do, they've mentioned this Hazardous Discharge Site Remediation Fund, the HDSRF for short. So I would like Bruce and Tom, if Laura Brinkerhoff and Jack Kozan have not already been in contact with Ray here, that they be given the contact information to have conversations with each other. Because obviously one of the factors in this is whether we can get the funding to do these things. And in looking at what you see here on this sheet, it says that there's up to $3 million that we might be able to qualify for as a township for a particular site. Not that the state necessarily has that right now, but we know the DEP's been to the Frequency Engineering Laboratory site, in fact, and that the cleanup costs are estimated to be somewhere between $5 and $7 million. So when you're talking about dollars of this significant nature as assistance to us trying to maybe remediate that site, that is very significant. And we have, in fact, tasked someone to look into whether or not we can do this. And one of the considerations, again, was funding. So if Laura doesn't actually have Ray's information, I'd like to get them in contact with each other.
Is that Brinkerhoff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we dealt with them before. I believe that for the hazardous discharge site remediation fund, that those applications originate with DEP and then they're sent over to us to for administration. But I'd be glad to work with whoever it is that, you know.
She's doing like a white paper for us right now to see whether or not it's something we should further consider. But again, part of it is the funding.
I'd be glad to try to help with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh or Mrs. Showmaker, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Does it also make sense, the Deputy Mayor is our Economic Development Committee liaison, perhaps we can have copies of this circulated to the
Absolutely.
EDC committee, and maybe they can talk about it at their next meeting, they're engaged with
Yeah.
the business people. And
Almost everything that's here that I brought tonight is on our website, and if you want me to come back at any time for any other meetings, I'd be more than
is
pleased
there any
to.
value in sharing this with our local Chamber of Commerce as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you want me to come back and speak with them, I will.
Perhaps we could, either Mr. Zanecki or Mr. Davis, we could get a copy of this packet to Ms. Dominguez and the Chamber of Commerce so that they can avail this service of the chamber members who are oftentimes looking for financing to remodel, restructure, particularly along the Route 9 corridor where we're trying to beautify the area.
In particular, we should get it to Mary Ann San Clemente. She's the chair of the EDC, and to Bob Fayes, who's this year's president of the chamber, and then they can further distribute it.
Excellent.
Okay, terrific.
I did bring a few extra there with Mr. Deputy Mayor.
All right, great.
Fact, but we want for
Well, we appreciate your coming out. We certainly will avail
appreciate you having
ourselves of any opportunities we can to work with you. It sounds like it's a great opportunity for business and industry, and we certainly would like to work with you.
Yeah, my boss says we're one of the best kept secrets in the state of New Jersey, so we're trying to get out and spread the word.
Well, good. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to come to Howell.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Fisher. All right, we also have with us
Thank you, Ray.
chairman of the zoning board, Mr. John Van Oy, and the secretary, Mr. Augustine Infuso, here to give us their 2005 report from the zoning board. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, welcome. We appreciate, first of all, your service on the zoning board. You're two long-standing members, so thank you for that. And I think you know everyone up here on the council's end. We'll turn the floor over to you. We do have copies of your report, so.
First, thank you for your kind words by saying long-standing as opposed to old.
There's no substitute for experience.
I think the first thing
Mr. Chairman, if I may, these microphones need to, if you could just pull it as close as you
I
can.
say the same thing.
You do
to
it,
all
right?
the people that come up in front of us. It's on.
And you run a great meeting, I might add.
Thank you. I think firstly, the board and myself would like to thank you folks for having us yearly give a report to you. I don't know, I've been on the zoning board for about 8 years, and about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we made a resolution that we would produce a yearly report in December of that year. Prior to that, it used to be June, July of the following year. And so it had become moot, and there was no action. And this administration permitted us to come forward and give that yearly report. And in fact, you have implemented a number of the things over the years that we've requested.
Thank you.
So I know the whole board feels this way, and they want to thank you for that, and just ask that you continue to do that. So
Thank
we
you.
have several recommendations that we put together this year, and they're all pretty straightforward. There's one or two that we probably want to spend a couple of minutes on, but really don't want to belabor this. Hopefully you have a copy of the report.
We do, yes.
Okay, so we could go right to item 2 of the resolution regarding home offices. We've had a couple of home office applicants in front of us. And usually they come as interpretations, and we have a rule that says we will only spend 15 minutes on an interpretation, and if we can't conclude it in 15 minutes, then it should be a full-blown application. Then something is wrong. The couple of interpretations that we've had along these lines have amounted to about an hour and a half. You hate to turn someone away. It always extends beyond what we had hoped. In this particular case, though, we would like to ask that the ordinance that we currently have just be slightly amended to specifically require a home business to make a sketch of the area that will be used for their business in their home and the area that's just for their residential requirements. The ordinance requires that not more than 10% of a residence be used for the business, or a maximum of 750 square feet. And we have no problem with that. But the problem is that when someone comes in front of us, we have no way of examining, are they within the spirit of what the ordinance is about. So we asked for in order to have better site compliance, that an amendment be made to that provision that would just require them, as part of their submission, be it an interpretation or an application, that they submit it can be hand-drawn floor plan. We're not asking for any architectural rendering at all, but something along those lines. Something that is, in fact, consistent with when you make application for a permit to make a change within your home. The permit process permits you to make your own drawings. So in that same spirit or context,
Is it okay if I ask questions while you're on this
Yes,
particular one?
yes.
Or were you finished, first of all, on this?
No.
I want to make sure I'm clear as to what you're saying people are coming to your board about as far as what they're asking. So this wouldn't necessarily be somebody using their computer in their kitchen or up in their bed.
no.
This would be somebody who wants to have a separate door and have people coming to his house as a place of business,
Yeah.
Parking, et cetera.
And the ordinance already excludes that possibility. You're not allowed to do that in this provision that we cited here, 18864. So we feel there's reasonable coverage there, and yet still gives latitude for entrepreneurs and startup businesses to conduct a reasonable business and have UPS and FedEx come and so forth. I think it's pretty extensive how it's defined, but there's this one area, and we had one particular applicant who was talking about expansions that he had hoped to make on his property in a residential zone, and it had us concerned, and we had no drawings, nothing.
Well, that was going to be my next question. You're already getting to it right now. Even though somebody may come to you and ask to put a home business in their house, it isn't necessarily so that it's actually permitted in certain zones as far as I know. Right? So just because somebody wants it doesn't mean... So they're coming to you to get the exception where they can have it in a residential area?
In just about all the cases, they come to us with the exception. And they go ahead with it, which I believe actually they're entitled to without a request in a residential zone, R2 or 3. They're permitted to have a home business as long as it doesn't occupy greater than 10% of their...
What I'm more concerned about, they have UPS, FedEx, other trucks coming into this neighborhood now. They have 10 people parking in the street. So what do we have on the books?
Yeah.
Right? Tom, maybe you can address. Tom Gannon, I mean.
Yeah.
What's the situation right now as far as, for our town as with regards to, let's say it's just a strictly residential R3 zone? Or, can somebody put in a...
I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
You both need
Yeah.
But generally, it's standards that include, like you said, lack of daily deliveries or things that are being done through the internet, that type of thing. No particular particular clientele parking or visiting, et cetera, et cetera. So it's to be as non-intrusive into the neighborhood as possible.
So if it isn't clear already, what would be the line that you're not supposed to cross? We should maybe look at that and make sure.
It is in there. We did examine that. And it's on 188-64-12, where delivery trucks shall be limited to UPS Postal, Parcel, Federal Express, or other similar delivery services, providing regular services to residential uses in the zone district. So
Right, you
it's
wouldn't
not to
want to have,
extend.
8 straight trucks or straight jobs
Right.
coming in once a week dropping off stuff. But,
Right.
UPS, FedEx, they're part and parcel of today's fabric, of society, because people are getting deliveries for the most part, so you wouldn't know
Right.
the difference.
Okay, so that language exists. Okay, good.
So that would help us. It would help us administer such applications. Okay.
John, can I just ask you a question? I'm over here, John, I'm sorry.
Yes,
How you doing? Good to see you again.
I could see you.
So you would want to have part of the checklist of the application process, just so you had an idea just what the scope was and with regard to the business versus the square footage of the house type of thing? All right, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, thank you. And then the next item, and Augie, feel free to jump in.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, before you go on, maybe we can just, at the conclusion of each of these provisions, we can sort of make a determination, and if we want more time to deliberate on them, we should take it. But on any of these, perhaps to get the ball rolling and acting on the report, we could direct manager and attorney to begin to work on draft ordinances on these. So what's the pleasure of the council on item 2 of the report? Do we want to move in a direction to have something?
What's the big deal? I mean, helps you when you just look at the floor plan,
Right.
what you decided now.
Good.
Exactly.
It's
I wonder
not-
why it wasn't before.
It's something that the homeowner can draw theirself.
Absolutely.
It's very simple.
Yeah, we don't want to create an economic bureaucracy for the resident.
Right, that's my sentiment. Thank
Yes.
you.
Mr. Tabasco, you agree?
I'm all right.
Okay, good. So on this one, Mr. C, if we could begin getting thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. As you also know, we've had a number of gas station applications involving expansions for convenience, food convenience capabilities, and it's been from large chains like a Wawa to individual entrepreneurial owners of gas stations in Howell who, in order to compete, feel that they have to provide some convenience store drive-through capability.
Makes sense.
Administering them is fairly straightforward, and we haven't had too much of a problem. But I think in the HD zones, it would be good to add it to our land use ordinance. It says such a thing is permitted. Times have changed for us. Just like we used to, and we still do on the books, have an ordinance that says, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I think it says that houses of worship and schools can't be closer than 2,500 feet to a gas station. Now, that goes back to the 30s, 40s, and
Right.
50s when we didn't have the safety equipment. And I
They're
can't...
conditional uses, and today, most of those are not favored by the courts, to a certain, not to that great extent.
Yes. And so we've seen that, and in knowing that, have been fairly flexible with an applicant. But when it comes to the convenience stores, we have to examine it more closely because it's really an extra use that we are granting to that owner. I don't think, Augie, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have denied anyone except we have spent a lot of time with the site plan associated
Yes.
with such an expansion.
Yeah, the last case before us was World Gas.
World Gas is an example of that, yeah. Because it does involve safety issues. The gas stations in general weren't originally designed for traffic flow and so forth to accommodate that type of use. So it winds up taking some time, but we first have to establish, is it a permitted use for us? And I think times have changed, and we should add that as a permitted use
Well,
in the HD zone.
I'm just one opinion. We all can give each individual opinions on that, but I understand the reasoning behind why they would want to have one with a big chain opening up just a couple blocks or a couple thousand feet away that now does
Gotta
their business
compete.
plus convenience, so they want to compete. And
Exactly.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the pleasure of the council on this point? We agree, disagree?
I mean, how can we approve new super Wawas with food and gas stations and then tell the gas station down the block?
That's our problem.
I mean, how could you tell them no?
Exactly.
I fully agree.
Mayor, I think this particular suggestion should be put forth before the planning board also, so they have input on it, master plan, et cetera.
Should we ask them first, Mr. Gannon, procedurally?
Well, we could look at it, prepare an ordinance, and send it back to them, but it probably, what I've seen is that those ordinances, because of the proliferation of what Mr. Van Noy is talking about, have become fairly common now. And the safety issues are not the same with the knockoff valves and that type of thing. So there still may be reason for proximity ordinances, but this type of retail/gas station use seems to be commonplace. I represent a zoning board, and we get a lot of them also, and that particular municipality is also looking at making them a permitted use or a conditional use. Obviously, you don't want to have one on a 40 by 100 lot or something, but with with specific lot size. So maybe the planning board should look at this and have the planner have some input too. And I'll defer to Mr. C about that.
Do you have any comments, Mr. Zunecki?
Yeah, I think the planner is always looking at the zoning codes as part of his master plan review, and I think we should just forward that on to him, if council agrees.
All right, so on this one, the takeaway is, we'll give it to Mr. Newcomb, have him take a look at it, query the planning board, the council, and then ultimately work with township attorney to draft an ordinance. It's a great idea, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
What's next?
The next one involved a lot of effort, and it involved a pool club application that we had in front of us. And as one member once summed it up, great idea, it's needed, it's the wrong time and place in this particular application. And I think that was probably an accurate summary, but I don't mean to dwell on the particular case. What I'd like to dwell on, and I think the whole board had this issue, was that we noticed that it's a permitted use, a club pool, a recreation center where you can have a pool in the R2, R3, R50, RRC, ARE, ARE2 zones. You could have that, including moderate to low income areas. But when reviewing sections 188, 70, 71, and 72 that describe moderate developments in residential areas or in the freehold acres area or in multifamily areas, it's specifically not included. and so it creates difficulty in interpreting whether a pool club is allowed anywhere, really, when you come right down to trying to implement it. And we think our town has grown sufficiently, and that there really is a need in the community for more pool clubs of some sort, i.e. like in the Candlewood section of Howell, that I think we need to, again, research this area and take a look at it again. And it's probably also a planning board issue as well. But I think we will see in the coming years more and more applications along this line, and the applicant really has no viable place to say, oh, this is where it's permitted. Here's a section of land that I can do something with. And so we would like to see that addressed.
On this point, my own recommendation would be that perhaps the Standing Master Plan Subcommittee could take a look at this on an ad hoc basis and attempt to determine where there may be an appropriate
That'd be
fit
excellent.
placement.
Yes.
And maybe try and work that through the planning board, and then have them come back to the council with where perhaps that may best fit. Does that sound satisfactory to everybody? Any comments or opinions?
I'd like, Mr. Gannon, am I allowed to comment on this, being as I was in the party that
You and Bob need to
was against the pool club?
We're not dealing with specific applications, so I think you're free to voice your opinion in general terms as to, pool clubs and that type of thing, sure.
Mr. Van Noyes, I don't know. There were many places that a pool club could have went in this town. Okay, I don't believe there were no places that a pool club could have went in, and we went through that on a couple different occasions. This just happened to be a residential zone that they wanted changed
Yes.
to permit a pool club. There were many commercial pieces that they could have put a pool club in. So I would just like to clarify that there was no place to put a pool club.
Well, there were no place in the residential area because you have the problem of sections 188, 70, 71, and 72. And that's specifically what we were referring to. I agree with you. There are definitely commercial areas that it could have occurred, but there's nothing like what could have occurred in Candlewood. We have no place where that could have been replicated. And that's what I was referring to, because we've heard of a need that some residents would like to see that occur, and it not have to be off Route 9 in a commercial area, for example. So I'm not arguing your point because I think you're exactly right. And if a company wanted to come in and set up a commercial enterprise to put that in a commercial area, they could do that. But it's very, very difficult in a residential community setting like Candlewood.
Well, I believe the same as the residents in this situation would be the same as the residents anywhere. They wouldn't want it in their backyard.
That's why it's going to be good to have this in front of the master plan
you know,
subcommittee.
Candlewood was a community built with the pool club.
Right.
You knew what you were walking into. To go and take one and put one in somebody's backyard is not acceptable. And I don't think any community, any resident would be happy with it in their backyard. And if they are, let them put them in their backyard. That's my thoughts on that.
Well, I don't want to say I totally disagree with you on that. We see a lot of developments coming through the township right now, and we see large homes on small pieces of property. We see people come before us for variances because they don't meet rear yard setbacks. Some people want to come in and put in pools because there isn't anything convenient to go to. So I believe that, you know, we should try to make it a little more convenient. Maybe that may not be the best choice of words, but I think we have a Candlewood development. When it was built, they built a swim club. That's the only swim club right now in Howell Township. The township's growing.
Yeah, Brookside.
Brookside. Now, but I understand Brookside is closing.
About 3 years, yeah.
Oh, in 3 years. Okay. With the community growing and primarily families coming in, they're either going to wind up putting pools in their backyards to make it convenient, or if there is the convenience of a pool club in the area, they'll utilize that. So indirectly, we're either going to see people come before us for variances, for rear yard setbacks, because the properties aren't large enough to accommodate a pool, or maybe the other alternative is to be a little more flexible in allowing, say, a swim club in a residential area, which we're not seeing that in these particular zones.
Especially in some of the newer ones.
Yeah.
We, I think, would concur with you. I think the board would agree with you that, you know, nobody wants it in their established backyard. For the most part, we got residents in the area in question in this particular case that came to us and said, we don't agree with them. We would love to have it. So we didn't want to get into that situation.
We're digressing into arguing that
why don't
application.
we do
I got
this?
I got some other comments separate from that. So
My own judgment, I think Councilman Walsh's points are right on.
Yes.
People need to be protected. They don't want to find out that all of a sudden they've been living in their little neighborhood for 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden there's going to be a problem or some change that they didn't want, whatever the case may be. But obviously the Candlewood Pool Club was a fabulous experiment, and it has worked wonderfully for 30, 40 years.
Correct.
And so there can be a fit, and at least in my view, the most appropriate process to follow is to have the planning board members who have responsibility on the subcommittee for the master plan look at it and try and, in their judgment, come back with some recommendations on where it may fit and how it may fit.
We feel that
And
would be
let
excellent.
that permeate from there, and if it ultimately comes back here and we don't want to act on it, we don't have to, but that may be the best course. I mean, do we at least agree with that? And there could be good debate there, but is that the best course?
yeah, I would send the recommendation that any developer comes in with an application for 200 or more homes. Part of it should be that there should be a community pool for that community
That's
as
how
part
we
of the
feel.
application.
That's why it should be
exactly how we
in front
feel.
of, and that's why it should be in front of the master plan
Right, and then
subcommittee.
the second point I have, setting the whole pool conversation aside, is that what you found here was a conflict between a schedule and an ordinance. So I'm sure you run across conflicts between what's on our books all the time. Anytime that happens, it definitely has to be perked up to the higher authorities here so we can get it remedied the next time we do go through ordinance reviews.
Right.
So I like the whole process here, just bring that up as a point. Not necessarily about the pool club itself, but that there is
Correct.
conflicts periodically that
We were just using that as an example.
Right. So make sure it perks up to whoever
We're
has to
okay with
know.
that, so we'll go to the master plan subcommittee, and if any of us have any individual comments, I think their meetings, the chairman of the planning board is here, I think and I think the chairman of the subcommittee may be here, Mr. Curry, or maybe he's on it. But I think that they meet, and those meetings are public, so perhaps you fine gentlemen can maybe even testify
Yes.
in front of them and give them your comments, which, based on what you experienced with that application, may be helpful.
Okay, thank
The
you.
only other
Great.
comment I have is that when we were considering what we might do with this huge amount of acreage that we're acquiring in the middle of town, and what structures might be there. Obviously, there's no money for anything right now, but down the road, one of the considerations part of that was going to be a natatorium, which would have an indoor
Yes.
pool and an ice skating rink, and also an outdoor type community amenity as well. If you go to Ocean Township off of West Park Avenue, across from the high school, they got a huge community pool,
It's
and it creates such an identity to the town.
Yep.
And many residents belong to that. And
Yes.
it's not in the middle of a residential neighborhood in regards to what Bobby was saying. You know,
That
top
comes
is at the high
closer to
school.
what
Right.
Mr. Walsh.
So Helene has great knowledge of that facility too. So she always talks about that as something we should emulate at some point too.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, what's next?
Next one is admittedly a little vague, but we're examining the permitted uses in an SED zone, and we think that a little more creativity, this has to be revisited as well, and again, it would invite the planning board to participate, to encourage future development, and maybe offer some other types of businesses that could be permitted in such a zone. Right now, we include offices, financial institutions, medical centers, warehousing. But, we get a variety of things that, as a matter of fact, I think it applies to this case. We had someone who dresses, from a butcher point of view, deer for people who hunt. And we had to make sure that this would be permitted in this particular zone, and it wasn't straightforward, and it was a shame even that he had to go through. Everything else about his application was perfect.
I remember that.
And, we don't want to make it onerous on an applicant, or especially an entrepreneur that doesn't have tons of startup capital, and we want to see that in our town, clearly. We want to make the process smooth. And so I think we ought to just look at it, at the SED zone again, and consider some other uses.
On that point, I mean, I think we would appear we all agree. What's the pleasure of the council on the best way to act on that one?
I also believe that the master plan subcommittee should address that.
The only concern I have on this one is that we are actively looking at the SED zones right now.
Oh.
What's permitted, what's not. I believe the 23rd is the next master plan hearing. And while I'm certainly not the planning board's counsel, it would appear to me that this is not sort of a demonstrative enough change in the SED use where we would have to potentially go back and reopen and do
Yes.
those kinds of changes. Could we, Mr. Zanecki, could we perhaps maybe take this particular item and send it to Ms. Capitan, or maybe this report, call her attention
She makes
to item 5? Yeah, she actually types this, I suspect.
I have two comments with regards to
And
this.
maybe, for the planning board's meeting on the 23rd, since we're going to be talking about the SED zone and all the zones for that matter, it'd be great to incorporate it right now. This one could happen right away.
That'd be great.
As a follow-up to what you're talking about, I think what John's getting to is that, none of us are professionals as to what the growing trends are in economic
Correct.
development.
That's right.
However, there are people that are, and we have an EDC that actually has a budget. They have about a $5,000 a year budget, I
They
think, to do studies. And we also have the chamber, so maybe we should get information back to the chamber and to the EDC to, hey, go out and do some research and find out what statistically exists out there as to what the growing trends are for industries. And we should start targeting those and maybe
Good
let
point.
go of some others that we don't.
That's
that
a
we-
good point.
That's an excellent point. So,
I'm sure that data exists.
I don't know when the next EDC meeting is, but
Well, actually, they may have changed it. It was the fourth Monday. I'll have to talk to Mary Ann.
perhaps this is something that could be talked about there and have.
We're actually presenting to the chamber
on the
on the
22nd.
22nd, too, so we should ask that as a question
Okay.
of them.
So there's a bunch of different follow-ups to try and
No,
dig
we're not.
into. If you flip it over, Pete, or Bob, there's an updated note. We will look into this one, because your
great.
point's well taken. I think the deputy mayor hit the money on it as well. Okay. Number 6.
Okay, number 6, we more frequently are getting applications because, as you know, Howell is still in a transition phase. And that transition goes back to 1920, 1930. You had your postage stamp lots, none of which had roads. Some of them were used as summer camps. Some of them were used as nomad homes. You know, it was just quite a variety of stuff. And it still exists in Howell. And one by one, they're coming to us. And it gets complicated, especially when there isn't a road there, or someone says, no, there's a paper road, and here it is, and I can show you, look at this, 1930, here it is. And, you know, it's this overgrown thing, so we have a site review, and we go out there, and there's an Indian trail through the woods. And we see that. So in order to make things a little easier for us to work through these, we would ask that we include that the applicant has to show proof as part of the application that they have contacted neighboring parcel owners and either offered to purchase or sell their own property, which is a state requirement whenever you're trying to make a hardship request as to being granted a variance. But that they do this before coming before us. It's already state law that it's required, but so many people come in front of us and either they don't know or it's not on our checklist. And we would just like to handle that right up front. There's been times where we've spent a couple hours and, you know, we could have resolved it right up front.
Are you telling me they have to offer to sell?
They have to either, because they're talking about a hardship here, they have to offer to sell land or minimize in order to get full value out of their land. They can't declare a hardship if they can sell their land. They can't declare a hardship if they could purchase an adjacent piece of property that would then make them conforming to our zoning requirements.
Makes sense.
And it does make sense. It's a reasonability issue of trying to resolve and conform to the zoning ordinance. But a lot of times people come and they say, well, you know, no, I didn't do that. And then we have to stop the proceedings after having gotten that far, and they have to go out and do their mailers, and then not everyone responds, which is all part of the process. We know what to do if that happens, but it'd be nice to have it as part of our
This one seems
checklist.
pretty straightforward. Could we direct to the manager to have the ordinance updated to reference this? Yes. Okay, good. It's a good idea, fellas.
Great, thank you.
Number 7.
Number 7, this one I will attempt to be. I just as soon not go through the actual incident that created this, because there's no value to that to anyone. But where we're coming from is this, and we got input from attendance at a Brookdale courses last year, which many of us attend every year to brush up on our zoning expertise. The state, as you probably are aware, is taking on more and more of the, well, they call it responsibility, but I call it rights, of home rule on defining what zoning should be in a community. And you would probably be shocked if you knew the extent of what is going on at the state level. It is somewhat scary, and when they make changes, they do cover themselves by sending out to either the planning board, zoning board, or any of the other boards within a township what recommendations they are making and when they plan to enact them as law, because by de facto they become they trump anything that we might do. Well, we were at this particular course where an attorney for the state presented a number of changes that were being implemented, and they said that they had already received 90% approval from all the towns and received comments from 90% of the towns. So I think, Augie, you were there too.
Yes.
We immediately said, well, not from Howell. And we went through and we discovered that, in fact, there was a board in Howell that had gotten it, made their own comments, sent them back as representative of the town. And it preempted us from commenting, and it was significant. And so we think that, in general, the town council should have that authority, that anything that does come in to any of the boards, to make it very clear to all the boards that those boards must notify the council, that because they don't speak for the whole town, they only can speak for their own board, that they notify the council and ensure that all other boards that are involved in whatever the topic may be are notified, can provide you input back to the council, and then you folks can be the ones that respond to the state.
Mr. Chairman, what I can tell you is that the council has deliberated on that exact point. And without getting into specifics, because to your point, it doesn't serve any useful purpose, we're fortunate that we have volunteers that serve on any board. And everyone truly does trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But communication is very, very key.
Right.
And so at the time, we had Mr. Davis send a letter, I believe, to perhaps, maybe it was the organization that was in question, because we had a similar, if I'm thinking, we had a similar issue where something was responded to, and it had a different position than the one that the then governing body had espoused. And we really felt that the contradiction wasn't helpful to the municipality. We want to be respectful of everybody's opinions, but we felt that as the governing body, we really needed to weigh in on the issue. So Mr. Davis sent a note to that particular organization, and I believe, to the other boards and commissions saying, your rights and your opinions are absolutely important, but we might need to better synchronize how we communicate our message.
Right.
So perhaps when it's required to issue a response, the boards and commissions send to the manager, everyone's collective replies, the council takes a look at it, and then we collectively we reply as a unified municipality. And if there's policy disagreements among us, then the liaison to that particular board, Mr. Tabasco, Mr. Walsh, can deal with that particular board and relay, that as the case. But we have tried to address that issue. I think we've made some progress on it, and I don't believe that that's something we should experience again. But we share in your concerns, and it's a point very well taken.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so take care of that. And then just lastly, a number, again, people come to us, especially people who ask for interpretations, and they really don't know the zoning process. As you well know, they view it all as a arduous bureaucratic process, and it really isn't. And we try to make it as friendly and let people know that it's a very useful thing. Just like the permit process is a very, very useful thing in the town. It instructs people in safety, in knowing what they can do that won't affect other people and so forth, and educates them to do it properly. Except that many people still don't know about it. And we think that if we could expand the Howell website somewhat to include more about what some of the zoning regulations are all about, descriptive information that would give a more friendly face to the permit process, to the zoning process, to making an application, to what is an interpretation, and when can you do an interpretation versus a full-blown application. Things like that, I think, would help us. So it's work. I am not trying to trivialize this. This is effort. This is effort.
Well, I concur with John that, and you happen to be in IT, so you might know this too. But, 10 years ago, about a third of the people had access to the Internet and finding information by going there first. About 5 years ago, it was about 50% of the people. But I'd venture to say now, at least 3/4 of the people go to the Internet first to get information. So if we had this kind of stuff on the Internet, they would, you're exactly right, they'd go out into their websites, our website, grab it without first having to make a phone call or show up here.
Well, one thing we should update you on is that the town is fairly close to implementing Phase 2 of the website makeover. In fact, I think the council members all saw a copy of a prototype of at least what the look of the new web design is going to look like. And it's really going to be pretty fabulous, and it's going to step up our capabilities very dramatically from where they are today. And I think that's something that if we can, Mr. Zanetti, as a takeaway for next steps, would be, in fact, to have maybe a tutorial around some of the more common things that people run into from a zoning perspective, you know, the do's and don'ts, or there's a publishing company that's made a fortune on Microsoft for idiots. We want to insult our residents, but you know, zoning for the layperson, and maybe it touches on the 8 or 10 most commonly called upon areas, and that's a great takeaway from our MIS department. All right, super.
End of story till next year.
Well, I know we're all going to thank you. This was a great report. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's valuable.
I can tell you put some thought into this, and, you know, to make it easier for the resident.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it's a
really
nice
what it's
report.
about. Right.
In fact, your report has become so admired that the outgoing chairman of the planning board from last year, in fact, made a recommendation that the planning board do exactly what you do, and that it be required via ordinance that the planning board come once a year and also share with the council much in the same way that you have done. So you gentlemen, and please bring our sentiments back to the full board. We appreciate all the time. We're all familiar, in particular this past year, with your schedule. It was overwhelming. You met how many countless times, special meetings, at times some of the more
Site reviews.
colorful meetings that took place.
We had a couple of those, yeah.
You had a couple of those, the site reviews, and it really goes without saying that we appreciate the time you and the board put in. And we're going to act on these things because they're great recommendations.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to go into our public session. I know some people have come in. If you'd like to be heard tonight, it is our open public night. Mr. Davis, I'll write down these two names. Maybe you could just leave it in the front for anyone that hasn't already signed it. Ed Kelly, Mr. Raya. If you'd like to speak tonight, please come on up and sign that. The first person is Mr. Ed Kelly. Mr. Kelly, welcome, sir. Please give us your
Starting at 8:40.
name and address. It is 8:40. Oh, you can't. Oh, yeah, you can. All right. Good evening, Mr. Kelly. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
Very well, sir. How are you?
I'm here again about the same thing, the American flags. Okay, the last time I was here was February 21st, and I made a report. At that time, I was speaking to you, and there was a lot of noise in the back of the room. I wonder if the people that sit back there would come forward, because I think the seats in the front are not getting used enough, and they're going to be worn out at the back. At the time when I was giving the report, Mr. Davis interrupted me, and he forgot to let anybody know that we've had 5 official meetings on the flag and 2 unofficial meetings. And when a gentleman later on made a statement that the manager / clerk wasn't responsible for the way the flags are being flown in the Howell Township, Mr. Davis forgot to address that to the gentleman. What my problem is now is with the Chamber of Commerce. The flags are not being flown correctly by the members of the Chamber of Commerce. This has been an ongoing problem since June 7th of 2004. I have had many meetings with the executive director of the Chamber and also with Mr. Davis with the 5 official meetings I had with him, but we are still not getting the flags flown correctly. Right now, up by the villages on the south side, there's a new furniture store, which is using 5 American flags for advertisement. It's not patriotic. As Mr. Tabasco knows, when he went to the chamber, and you gave me his name as the liaison to the chamber, he came back to me and told me that all the members in the chamber were flying the flag because they're patriotic. That is not so. For example, Just Carpets, again, they had flags out on the street, not on the street, I'm sorry, in the right-of-way of Highway 9. This is one of the things that I was trying to get straightened out with Patty Hoover when I got my disorderly conduct award from the engineering department. They put the flags back out again. If they'd fly one flag on the building, that's being patriotic. Being out on the street is not being patriotic. It's only to catch the eye of the drivers going by. Another example, it's the Ivy League. They have a beautiful flag right next to their entrance, but they put another flag out on their sign, and that's just to catch the eye. Now, if the chamber members are not doing the flags correctly, okay, how am I going to get the non-members, like gas stations, like Getty Gas Station, okay? Most of the gas stations have followed suit, have cleaned up their act. But because the members of the Chamber of Commerce don't do it, the other people are starting to bring this about. I know you had a long meeting tonight, and I just want to get... my problem with the disorderly conduct award, I tried to get it straightened out with the police chief, but like I told you last time, they wouldn't... He talked to me at a meeting. It took me a long time to get a meeting with him, from the 18th of October to the 18th of January. I spoke to him, brought up the problem, and he was going to set a meeting with the individual that put in the complaint about me. A week later, I called up. There was no meeting set up. I called a week after that, and his secretary told me that the police chief told me to go see the individual, Mr. Phillips, who put in the complaint, which I thought was wrong. Why should I go and see a person that put in a complaint about me, and I got a record in the police station, okay? I cannot go to any business and hand out how to fly the flag correctly, because any other person can put in a complaint against me, and I'll have that as the second award that I'll be getting. Okay? So these are the things that are wrong, and Mr. Davis knows a lot about it. Okay? He did not open his mouth when Steve Molina questioned about the American flag. He should have told him about the 5 meetings that we had. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but after you, Mayor, I think I'm going to be the next target for the police department.
Well,
Thank you.
Before you go on, there's no issues with the police department with me. But on a serious note, the council and I have a annual meeting with the Chamber of Commerce on March the 22nd. It's their business meeting, and for many, many years, the council and the mayor have gone there for an annual presentation to talk about goals and objectives for the township. Our new township manager is going to be accompanying us, and we have a good exchange with the business leaders. And I assure you that one of the things that we will talk about, because I will bring it up, is we have to find a way to get the businesses to appropriately use the flag. That if they want to fly the flag, they have a constitutional and patriotic right to fly the flag, but it shouldn't be used for signs and coupons and silly pictures and things that are not intended. So I assure you that in a very public way, we will make it very clear to the chamber that we require them to assist in policing themselves. I think they want to do that. And I don't think some of the businesses are doing this to be disrespectful. I think they're doing it because they think it is patriotic. But we will emphasize the points that you have made so that there is no ambiguity, that people need to use the flag the right way, and we want to have a good open partnership with the chamber. And I know I'll see you after the 22nd, and I'll share with you the feedback we get from the chamber that night. And Mr. Zernecki, in the event that I'm going to put it in my notes, but if I fail to bring it up, I would ask that you, as a reminder, get to any one of the five of us to remind us to make sure that night that we address this important issue.
Actually, Mayor, Mr. Kelly had dropped off a flyer on displaying the flag. What I thought we would do is photocopy the cover of the EDC packet and maybe that flyer as well. So in your comments, I don't know if you're going to have a chance to speak, but you can point out what's in the packet that we brought with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be terrific.
Mr. Zernecki, he's dropped them off all over Howell.
You also have them on the clerk's desk in the front. I dropped them in all the other buildings that I get into. But Mr. Malabe, at one of the meetings back on the, let me see, October 20th, okay, he suggested that a letter be sent out to all the businesses on educating them, because, and part of this is Mr. Tabasco was mentioning. I gave a copy to the new manager. I'll leave this for you. And,
okay.
That was supposed to be done back in October. Okay, I don't know if that letter ever went out, or I got a copy for my file. I don't know.
We'll
if
make sure that on the 22nd that we request the chamber send out a copy of that letter or some correspondence to every member, as they do with great frequency, about the appropriate use of the flag in advertisements and in promotional material, and when they display it on their buildings, that they do so in conformance with the government's flag guidelines.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Lariah from the Villages, welcome, sir. Nice to see you. As always, Mr. Lariah, please give us your name and address.
Vince Lariah, 56C, the Villages. This is something that came to my attention this afternoon. We received notice from an entity, if you will, called the, I can't even think of the name anymore, Department of Community Affairs. Individuals from this group are inspecting the villages nominally to see that our structures are safe. I don't know if it's a legitimate activity. We pay a $500 inspection, but what I'm after is, what's the protocol for somebody saying we have to come in and look at your building?
Do you have any copies of, have they given anything out when they've arrived, Mr. Lariah?
Oh, yes. Well, this is a letter that came to our association office.
Okay.
And then, of course, the letter where our association tries to alert the residents that we're going to have this inspection.
Okay. Are those copies we can have? I'd like to give them to Mr. Czernecki.
I would absolutely like to see those. For
if we could take a look at them, and we will certainly investigate. Do they have any statutory right? What's the basis of them doing? And certainly act as your advocate to make certain that there is some good justifiable reason why they're doing this.
Yeah, they quote a public law, but I...
Do they?
I remember Barbara talking about this as much as a year and a half ago, too.
Yeah, okay. And that,
we will check it out, and we'll make, I know we've got your number. We will see to it we get back to you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
This is not the first time.
Yeah, this has come up previously. Okay, thank you again, sir. Mr. Warren Curry, welcome, Mr. Curry. Is he? Oh, there he is.
Oh, you have the list back?
We do. Two more.
That's it?
That's it. Good evening, Mr. Curry. Just please give us your
Good evening, ladies and
name and
gentlemen.
address for the record.
Warren Curry, Georgia Tavern Road. This is the first time I've spoken since we have a new township manager. I'd like to welcome you and wish you the best of luck. In view of the headline in the Asbury Park Press today, Howell may lose millions on sale, has to do with the frequency engineering location. I'm quite surprised that we don't have a big turnout tonight. I wonder where all the naysayers and the rumor mongers are tonight, who are usually here. They seem absent. Some of the people who are driving the recall of the mayor in this town are the same people who came to the planning board, or the master plan meeting, I should say, to protest anything that might be done, or what the council was trying to do with the frequency engineering location. And the mayor outlined at that time that if it was shown to be in need of redevelopment, we could qualify for brownfields money, grants. And that money could clean up the pollution there at that time. And that would make that property very valuable. And in view of the fact that that property owes the township $4 million, that would have gone a long way to help our new budget, which is in dire need of funding. It just occurs to me that some of this lunatic fringe that's out there, who is calling for the recall of the mayor and putting out posters saying that the planning board and the council are a bunch of pirates and things of that. I'm sure you're well aware, you full-page ads they took out. I'll have more to say on this when this place is full. But it just annoys me that they keep costing the township a lot of money. The recall will cost something like, what, $50,000 or something?
57,000.
What is it, Mr.
Yeah.
Hawes?
And we have a possibility now that this judge ruled that the frequency engineering location has to go up for auction, and one guy offers him $1 million for it. That's like 25 cents, considering what it's really worth. Something's very strange about this. And I just wonder why a judge would do that when there's like over $14 million outstanding in liens on that. I read that whole transcript on all of that thing, and my understanding of it was that the judge's function in this is to try to make it as worthy of purchase so that it would cover, or nearly cover, or at least respectfully cover the amount of outstanding liens against it. It doesn't look like this judge made any effort in that area. Of course, we have no control over the judges, but I just wanted to point out what some of these people who are going around raising hell in this town are costing this town. And as a taxpayer, I really resent it. I commend you people for trying to do a very good job up there. And my knowledge of your efforts is considerable. Keep up the good work, and don't be affected by these fools that are out there who are only seeking power in this town. They don't even have a plan. So just keep up the good work, I implore you. And I wish you the best of the luck through this. I'll have more to say on this when we have more people here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. I appreciate your comments. Jim.
In light of the fact that Warren brought this up, I'll try to be as concise as possible, but, we're elected, and being elected, we're supposed to do things that we wholeheartedly believe are right. However, since we've been together, we've also been big believers in being inclusive, letting everybody in under our big umbrella here to participate. And those two things don't always agree. Because I think we know what we meant to do based on the input of many very good professionals, was the right thing to do, which was to declare that an area in need of redevelopment, which would have led to a lot of monies coming back to us that had been gone for, or not in our hands for a long period of time. But in being inclusive, we then subjected ourselves to this long filibuster which killed our opportunity to do what we knew was right based on a lot of good input from professionals. So the difficult decision for us is that we are elected in a republic situation. We can't have anarchy. We can't always try to include everybody. We have to actually make the decisions which are best for the town, that we know are best, and take whatever flack sometimes that we know are going to come from a very vocal minority. We really got burned on this one. I mean, we badly got burned on this, and we knew it was right from day one. But again, because we wanted to have input, which we didn't really necessarily need, we got burned. So I feel bad about that. I feel really bad about it. We lost an opportunity for $4 million to be collected for now. And we're still, the public should know that we're still fighting this. Behind the scenes, there's still a fight going on where we may get this back. But that was a big hit to our chin because we tried to be inclusive.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, Elaine Taylor, oh, there she is. Welcome, Mrs. Taylor. Come on up. Good to see you, Ms. Taylor. Please give us your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Elaine Taylor, 1055 Maxim Southern Road. My first issue is about the fencing around the Grange. I checked out the plans for the village square that's going next to the Grange. And at the planning board meeting, they approved that we would have fencing that would protect the Grange from traffic or people coming on the property or whatever. They only included fencing on the south border of our property and not the back, not the west. West? East? No, the west. Not the west part of the property. And you were there. I was there. There were many people that were there. And, you know, it was interpreted improperly. However, whoever interpreted whatever went on there. So I'm here to get it on the record. I went to the township and got a CD to listen to it. I could not figure out for the life of me how to get that information off of the computer, off of the internet, to download it. I'd spent 3 hours trying to figure it out, and I couldn't do that. So it's very complicated. And what the instructions say and what happened are two totally different things. So I think you should simplify that a little bit for the public.
Could we, just as a takeaway, maybe to Mrs. Capitan, maybe they need to just redo the instructions as they're going through a CD. Maybe something's changed.
I think it has.
Make certain the instructions are compatible with the. I've done that when I've had to catch up on meetings where I wasn't able to be there, and you listen to the CDs, and it is a little complicated. I will admit.
I want to recommend that you videotape the planning board meetings.
We
just
will
like
be.
This.
That is actually that is going to be happening.
It'll be much better.
Zoning board probably too.
Yeah, the plan is for the at least the planning and the zoning board to be taped, and then ultimately with the advent of the overhaul of the website, you can, if you don't have access to cable television, you'll have video streaming on the website so that you can on demand go in and pick the date you want and review and actually watch the meeting on your computer.
And when is that proposed?
I don't know the exact date, and Mr. Zanecki may not know it either on the fly. He's still getting up to speed. But
I'm not certain about that feature exactly, but I know that we are looking for to announce the new website sometime in early mid-April, when it goes live. And there'll be many features on it. I'm just not, that I have reviewed, I'm not sure that's one that I'm confident saying is going to be there.
Okay. What else, Ms. Taylor?
The next issue is my same old issues about trees. I have 4 sites that are being developed that have been clear-cut. I've photographed all of them, and I'm going to make a formal complaint of the way that these things are being handled. The first one is, of course, around the village square. All the trees were taken down there. On Lanes Pond Road, there's a development going in. On that particular site, they cut down 200-year-old white oak trees that were at least 3 feet in diameter. Now, I got a problem with that. I've got a problem with all of this, and something has to be done. On the corner of Route 9 where the Walgreens is going in, where Jim's rental was that's totally clear cut. There were trees on that property as well. And then next to the miniature golf site, I don't know what that's going to be. I have no idea, but that whole area was
By
clear
Home Depot,
cut.
you mean? The old miniature, what do you mean?
Yes.
The miniature
Yeah.
golf place,
That's
totally
where-
clear cut. What is that going to be?
Is that over where the bank's going to be?
Next to where the Home Depot is. Is that what you're talking about?
Kind of down the road. It's south of that.
Oh, or blue, I don't know what.
Not blue, it's
Not
no.
Blue, on the other side, towards Home Depot.
Towards Home Depot, I know there used to be a miniature golf place many, many years back.
If I recall, there's been a number of applications. I
Was
thought it was.
Sports Depot at one time?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is now.
There's a bank going at the corner of West Farms and Route 9.
Right, but that's not what she's talking about.
And right next to there is the lot she's talking about.
That's what she's talking
I thought it was supposed to be a medical office building that was supposed to go there.
I don't recall.
Yeah,
Professional office
Professional
building?
office building. It could be an office building is what it appears.
All right,
Well,
so
getting to Elaine's point, though, is
My point
is
is
there a
that
process for before the clear cut starts? Or
I'm
Ziggy
really
has
sick
to-
and tired of it.
Well, there is, Mr. Nunziato, what actually is the process when someone is going through, and I think there's a Ruby Tuesdays, for example, going in where Jim's rental was, when can they go in and begin to remove trees? And we have a tree ordinance, they have to replace them, but
There's a woodlands ordinance and a woodlands plan or permit that is issued as part of normally as part of the planning board or zoning board application. And again, that's their tree clearing plan, okay? The process as it stands now is when they have their pre-construction meeting, I mean, there may be some permits they don't have in hand. They could do site work, they could do clearing, they could do earth work, they could do excavations. And typically, as far as the clearing limits are concerned, they have a surveyor that goes out and they flag the limits of clearing, and then the surveyor comes out and he actually uses either the GPS or survey equipment to certify that the limits of clearing are as depicted on the approved plans. And that is typically how a clearing limit goes. As far as Village Square, which you had, the last time Ms. Taylor was here, she had requested an inspection. And I've actually been carrying that around for the last 6 weeks, and I do have it with me. We did perform an inspection on February 6th, and the limits of clearing were correct and indeed did match the approved plan. However, there were 2 or 3 trees in addition that were requested to be inspected by our tree expert, Mr. Panic. He did inspect them in the field, and he did say that they were unsafe trees and they should be removed in addition to what was approved, and he will request replacements for some of the additional trees that were cleared.
As part of that process, when they go through their site planning and before they actually start their clear cutting, I see it sometimes, not necessarily in Howell, but I see trees marked with ribbons to be saved, so to speak. So is that part of the process too, where Ziggy or somebody might have gone out and said, okay, you're going to clear cut this land, but we want to save these specimen trees, these 200-year-old 3-foot trunk oaks, and are they marked with ribbons where when they go do the clear cutting, they know to leave some of these trees up? Is that part of the process? I guess is what Elaine's asking, what I'm asking too.
And as you're going to respond, we have Shade Tree Commissioner, Mr. Schneider here, and he may also be able to comment. Before you do that, Mr. Schneider, Mr. Chairman, I should say, did you want to comment, Mr. Nunziato?
Well, again, as far as the woodlands ordinance is required, again, if it's a wooded, 10, 20, 50, 100-acre site, I mean, typically you're not going to identify every single tree. You're going to do a representative, area and, do a tree inventory accordingly. And again, that's how we do the limits and some of the contributions and some of the other things which we've debated for, quite some time. Nonetheless, there are occasions where there are significant trees that are to be saved, i.e. the one on Haversbridge Road, which was,
right.
A very heated issue. And yes, there are occasions where things will be ribboned to make sure that they are saved.
Okay. Mr. Schneider, or Mr. Chairman, I should say, do you have anything you could add?
What Mr. Nunziato said is correct. But first of all, we now have a landmark tree ordinance. Because of this council's leadership, the landmark tree ordinance takes any tree that has significance, such as the type of tree that Mrs. Taylor might be alluding to, and those trees are inventoried and nothing can happen to them. And the first example of that was the tree that Mr. Nunziato talked about on Havensbridge Road. Mm-hmm. Secondly, our certified tree expert now, especially since once again, the leadership that this council had, our certified tree expert goes out and does site reviews as soon as a plan comes out. And I want to give you an example of what he is doing. For instance, normally the plans may require a certain amount of trees, and a lot of these trees are trees that are not good trees, but they have to be replaced. And if they're not replaced, the money now goes into a tree fund. And the tree fund that this council established is for beautification and only for tree planting. And the first project is going to be along Aldridge Road. We're going to be replacing all those trees that came down for cutting for the wires. So beautification and the tree fund is there. But I want to give you a specific example. There's a little shopping center that's going next to where the Walgreens drugstore and Ruby Tuesday restaurant. It's a small strip mall. And in that particular mall, when the plans came, Mr. Zanuck did his site review. And on that particular piece of property, he found 100-foot trees. And he, in fact, met with the builder and convinced the builder to build the islands around those trees. Now, this is a first for New Jersey, a first for Howell Township, and those trees will be saved. Now, we're not talking about Ruby Tuesday. We're talking about the site south of that. So this is what we're trying to do now, and those trees will be saved, and the islands will be around them, and we'll have a small shopping center that's going to look like a park in Howell Township.
Because they're saving.
So we're very proactive in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Taylor, you have photographs, you said, or you've taken photographs of the areas in question. Do you have those with you now?
No, not with me.
Could you get them to Mr. Nunziato? Because what we should do is a comparison.
Or the JPEGs, if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, we should do a comparison of the photographs that you've got versus what their approved woodlands management plan is.
Absolutely.
To make certain that they haven't gone above and beyond what the plans have called for. So if you could get that to us, we will certainly look into it
That's
and make
fine.
certain that we hold them accountable to what was approved.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not done.
Oh, sure.
I want to know exactly how many trees were on the site and how many have to be replaced and where they're going to be replaced.
Might
This
be
is,
part of the site application.
I believe as a function of the woodlands management plan, that it does delineate the number of trees that they have to remove, and then our ordinance gives them an automatic calculation that tells them what they have to do by way of the number of trees, or in lieu of the trees, the funds that they need to give back to the municipality. And then I also am fairly certain that it is up to the shade tree commissioners. In the event that they don't put them right back on the property, if they deposit the monies in the account, the shade tree commissioners, as is the case in the Aldridge Road project, determine where else in the municipality those funds can be used to see to it the trees are at least put back somewhere else in town.
But very specific to an application, that's public information.
No
Yeah,
question.
It can be obtained
It's
through
in the woodlands
plan.
management plan.
that
Every
plan.
one of them is open, public. If somebody comes in, they're going to put a department store in, you'll know the exact number of trees that are coming down, and you'll know the number of trees that they have to either
It's all
replace
delineated.
or they have to give the cash in lieu of the tree. So that's all in any of those applications.
It's the woodlands management.
Just to specifically,
Sure.
It's in the land use office.
Yeah.
Right.
Under the application file.
Mhm.
Just simply ask the people at the desk that you'd like to see the approved file for this particular
And
development.
as you know, Elaine, our hopes is to get data such as that for applications eventually scanned. That's what we were investing in all this technology for. So that some year down the road, you can just basically go online again and pick up that information. You got it.
I want to know where the money's going. I want to know where the, just needs to be addressed. There's just too many trees being cut down. It's just.
We don't disagree, which is why we've got the new ordinance, so that if they come down, they have to go back up.
Is it really going to happen? Are there really going to be trees replaced, and where will they be
absolutely.
replaced?
Yeah,
This is very important.
Yeah.
Where will they be replaced?
The answer to where they replaced, I'm not certain, Mr. Nunziato, if you can answer it, but
The Woodlands Management
the Woodlands
Well,
Management Plan will
Shade Tree
dictate
Committee would know, too.
to their specific application what comes down. The Woodlands Management application on a particular project won't say you're going to put them back in some other location. For example, if they're putting in a medical arts building and there used to be trees where that building were, you can't put the trees back on top of the building. So the Woodlands Management Plan will dictate how many trees have to come down. It will also dictate where in their project
They'll be
they need to
replaced.
backfill with new trees. And if
Which
they're...
one? I mean, it's actually specific to
Exactly.
which one,
Very
based on Ziggy's
specific.
input.
Yeah, the tree expert now gives the report on the kind of trees they have to use.
I realize all of that.
And then...
But I'm sure that there are many more trees that need to be replaced, and we need places to put them. So perhaps
that's
it could
the-
be on,
That's what
That's the
Perhaps-
commissioners.
perhaps it could be on township property where they're, you could start a.
Mrs. Taylor, I invite you to any Shade Tree Commission meeting. We meet next week. It's the third Wednesday of the month. You can look at any of the site plans that we do. You can see the plots, the plans that the builders have to submit. There's a woodland management plan, and then there's a planting list of the type and species of the trees. And once again, I want to reiterate and tell you, because of this council's proactive in this particular area, I don't think we have seen, and we have two members of the Shade Tree Commission on the planning board, and we have Curtis Vislaki and myself, and Mrs. Schumacher, Mr. Tabasco, and the mayor will attest to it. There isn't a resolution that is passed without Zig Panic being involved. There isn't a site that can go that hasn't changed every single species and every single plant. We have never had such, in the 40 years that I've lived in Howell Township, and I established the Shade Tree Commission in 1967, and it wasn't until this mayor and this council became proactive. We waited 40 years almost for a woodlands management plan. It never was done. Nobody listened. Nobody cared. All of a sudden, Hal, you have a council, you have a mayor that really cares about the future and the beautification of Howell Township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Taylor. We have with us the Honorable Chief of the Freewood Acres Fire Company. I always like saying that. Chief Donahue. He looks terrific in that uniform.
Look at that. Look at that.
Boy, Chief. You clean up terrific. Welcome. This is Chief William Donahue.
Wish my wife
Hi,
would tell me
Bill.
that. Hello.
Good evening. Just give us officially your name and address. for the
William
record,
Donahue,
Chief.
I live at 10 Bass Place, but I'm here as the chief of the Freewood Acres Fire Department.
It's good to have you. Thank you.
First, I want to apologize for us leaving before we had an emergency call.
Is everybody all right?
Don't
A
apologize
motor
for
vehicle
that.
accident. Everybody's all right. I want to address the council because I was set back and quite upset over this hotel business for Northwoods Place.
Oh, no.
That we actually had a councilman that had to go outside this township and ask, quote, New York City firemen and Staten Island firemen about the firematics of this township. On the Channel 77, he said he also contacted two other fire companies in the township. I was a little upset because, one, it's my fire district. If they had a question about the firematics of this structure going up, they should have confronted me as chief of the district, not somebody from New York. I can care less what happens in New York. It's not Howell Township. My professional opinion, there's not a building that they're going to build. 6 stories is not a problem for the fire district. Is if there's a fire in the building, can we handle it? Yes, we can. This is my professional opinion. In my background, I have 25 years in volunteer fire service. I've been a paid fireman. I'm a paid captain. I've been one for 21 years. My opinion, can we handle a fire? Yes, we can. I'd like to ask the council if they would, who did they talk to in town, so I can take it back to our chiefs and say, we can straighten out the problem. But my professional opinion, there is not a fire that we can handle. If you put a 6-story motel in and it's on fire, we will put it out. I guarantee you that. It doesn't matter if it's on the 1st floor or if it's on the 6th floor. With today's standards, the building's going to have to be fully sprinklered. It's going to have to be fully standpiped. And can we do it? Yes, we can.
That's terrific. Thank you, Chief. I didn't talk to anybody, so I can't. I'm not certain who will.
I did.
So I asked you
I
two
didn't go
questions.
outside of town to go speak to anybody. I take great offense to what you just said.
You
I
said
own
it
a
on Channel
company. I have
77 News.
5 New York City firemen that work for me in my Staten Island office. I have 2 captains of the Jersey City Fire Department that work for me in my Freehold office. I stopped by Southern Fire Company and spoke to 7 firemen over there for about an hour and a half one morning. I spoke to 2 other firemen in the gym one morning. I spoke to another fireman over in Manhattan Bagel one morning. How am I supposed to make educated decisions unless I ask educated questions of people who have been in that field for a long period of time?
Well, I would ask you to give me the respect of coming to me since I am the chief of that district. I don't care what happens in New York City. I don't care what happens in Jersey City. It's not Howell Township. If you have a question about Howell Township, come see the chief of the department. It's going in my district.
Yeah, hold on, that is not what I was asked to vote on. I was asked to vote on and talk about an ordinance to approve 6-story, 75-foot buildings on Route 9 and Route 33. Are they all your district?
You are, if I'm not mistaken, the question on this was to approve the complex,
Hold on, no, that is not what I was asked to talk about. I was asked to talk about approving 75-foot buildings on all of Route 9 and Route 33 in all highway development zones.
Gentlemen.
Should I have come to you about all of Howell Township like you were the resident?
Calm down a little bit. You can talk about it.
Councilman.
Calm down.
I would ask you, I can appreciate your concern. I think we want to take a moment. Chief's asking his questions.
He didn't ask a question. He made a statement on why I had to go outside of town. At my disposal every day, I have 7 firemen with between 120 and 175 years' experience. What is the matter with asking them professional firefighters who have fought fires for all those years? What is the matter with asking them a question? What is the matter with stopping by Southern Fire Company and speaking to the full-time firefighters?
Can I play mediator for just a minute? I just want to play mediator for just 1 minute. I think what I'm hearing Bill say is that the firefighters from Howell's Freehold Acres district were actually insulted a little bit because you came out in public and said you didn't think that they could put the fire out. So that's why to me.
The question I'm asking on Channel 77, you made the comment that you talked with New York City firemen and actually said Staten Island firefighters and 2 other fire departments in the town, and we could not handle a fire if the motel was built on Highway 9 Northwood Place, that we could not handle a fire in there.
He's just insulted.
That is not what I had no idea when we first spoke about that hotel, that it was in your fire district. That had nothing to do with my comments. Nothing. And that is not what I was asked to talk about. I was asked to talk about and consider voting for an ordinance to approve 6-story, 75-foot buildings on all of Route 9 and 33. So the appropriate thing to do is to ask, I believe, do we have the equipment, the manpower, the expertise, and the trained firefighters to fight those type of fires?
And, sir, I am not arguing one bit with you. The question is, then why didn't you ask somebody from Howell Township? Why did you ask somebody from Jersey City? They don't know what we have in our district.
He lives in Candlewood. Yes, he does know what you have in your district.
Well, I've never seen it in my firehouse.
No, he does live in Candlewood. He lived there for about 13 years now. He's a captain of the Jersey City Fire Department. I have other firemen that work for me, run my Staten Island office. I have 2 retired firemen in my Freehold office. Why would I ask gentlemen right across from me? Have you ever asked other firemen for advice?
Of course.
Well, so did I. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is you made a public statement in the last meeting that we could not handle it.
Hold on.
I take that to offense.
I went and spoke to Southern Firehouse, and they said, yes, combined, you probably have the equipment. Alone, if there was a couple different fires in Howell, you probably did not. Now, that came from the paid full-time firefighters at Southern Firehouse that I stopped by one morning. Were they lying to me?
I wasn't there. I couldn't tell you what they said to you.
Okay.
But I am telling you, as my professional opinion, with years of experience, as both volunteer and paid, that if we do have the luxury of putting this hotel up, we will be able to handle a fire in the hotel.
All right, so my comment now, you guys can agree to disagree offline, but online, I want the public to know we're being told by our firefighters that, yes, the fires will be put out, and that if a hotel structure of 6 stories or more is put up at 70 feet or so, the infrastructure alone inside would fight that fire, in addition to the men coming and aiding and assisting the putting out of that fire. So people in the public, there's no danger.
And you
No,
have
I
to-
can't say that. They will put the fire out, is what I'll say.
There's always danger, but
Sure.
with the new codes and everything, the building will be sprinklered, it will be standpiped, and I have no doubt, 100% in my mind, we will be able to put a fire out in that building.
Wonderful.
That's terrific. So the height is not an issue.
No, it's not.
And we were talking about hotel structures, not six-story buildings all over, just hotel and conference
That's right.
centers. That's
As a-
that ordinance
as
is
a
about.
conditional use
Yes.
subject to
The way I
approvals, but-
understand, and I may be wrong, is that the council was voting on the convention, that one. They weren't voting on, you want to put a million of them up on Highway 9.
No, that's not true.
I'm talking about
Here
that.
we're
Here's-
voting on hotel
there-
conference
there's been a lot of conversation, and the focus of the dialogue had been around a potential project on 195. Because there we know that the property owner has approached the township, has approached the Department of Transportation, and would like, in fact, to put in a hotel, a conference center, and a banquet facility on 195. And certainly that has really been the genesis of a lot of the dialogue that has centered around this conversation. People who live in the adjacent neighborhoods, how would they be impacted? We have been talking about an ordinance that would make it a conditional use in the highway development zone, but I think that the primary emphasis heretofore has been on 195, because that's where we know we've got someone that has expressed an interest and would like to come and have their business in Howell. And I feel good knowing that while I have great respect for all the fire companies, in particular, Freewood Acres, you guys have and continue to do a wonderful job. And because of your proximity to 9, you see and are engaged in more crises than one could imagine. So I see several members of the fire service are here. So let us also take this opportunity to thank you, gentlemen, for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your, as a professional chief, your comments are important. We need to hear this so that we do have an understanding from the people that are involved in various aspects of the community, and your comments are very well intended, and they're very helpful to us.
Just for a little help for you, if you do need our opinion or the fire service's opinion, Joint Chiefs of Howell Township meet twice a month, or every other month, I'm sorry. All you have to do is contact Chief Hutmar.
Yes.
He can contact us. We'll be glad to meet with the council. That's the chiefs of the town, so that's the hierarchy that runs
Absolutely.
the departments. So if
I had
have any
you guys
questions-
were kind enough to have me there, I think at one of the meetings was at Squonkam.
Yes.
And I think it's a great opportunity, the way you guys can cross-communicate among all the different departments, and perhaps, maybe what we should do. When is that next meeting, Chief?
April 12th, but it may be changed.
It may be changed?
I'll let you know.
Please let me know, because maybe one of the things, we're not going to finish the ordinance on the 21st
Yeah, that's the spring
regarding
break week for the local schools.
this. So maybe what we can do is, I may enlist a member of the council, and maybe the manager, maybe we can get onto that agenda for a few minutes and talk to the entire, to all the chiefs about this, and we can garner all of your collective
great.
input about it, and that's a great idea on your part to have us come there.
Well, you just hit on what I was about to say. We have two big people here that are both big believers in service before self, Bobby and Chief over here. So we should be embracing each other. I know somebody was insulted and tempers getting hot, but let's not push away all. Let's embrace. So what you're talking about is exactly that. Let's all embrace each other and do what's best for the town. So.
And just, we have a lot of expertise in town, and I
Absolutely.
can't see letting it go,
No, we're going to put you to work, Chief.
It's all right with me.
Thank you for
Chief,
coming out.
I mean, for doing my homework, I felt like I was getting penalized.
No, sir, I
For
didn't.
doing my homework.
It may come out, you'll find out, in knowing me, I am first, I can't say gentleman. Things come out wrong when I open my mouth a lot of times. That's okay. I was a little upset that, they came out and, listening to 77 to saying, that, and then we can't fight us. Yes, we can.
A question. I mean, what am I supposed to do?
Well,
I mean, I've listened to a lot of professional advice in this township, okay? I've watched this council listen to professional advice. Sometimes they took it, sometimes they didn't. I mean, why do things get picked and chose?
The new rules.
Agreed.
We're in a big lawsuit now where the council didn't take the advice of our professionals, and we're embroiled in a huge lawsuit now.
What?
So we have the right to pick and choose, but
We are?
Well, Mr. Walsh, I will tell you, my door is always open. If you need some opinions or some professional advice about fire service, be free to contact me. I'd be glad to come talk to you.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thanks for coming out. All right, that closes the public portion. I just have a brief memorandum I'm going to read aloud. We have members of the community that are here quite a bit, and we do know that people watch these meetings on television, which is good to know. My wife says I should watch my posture, although we don't have the channel at home.
And we never can see it because we're always here.
We can't see it, we're usually here. But I've been on the governing body, I guess this is my fourth collective year.
That's 28 in dog
yeah,
years.
Just about that.
It's
28
in dog years, you dog.
And I've watched my predecessor, Mayor Konopka, grapple with this issue, and I've consulted with even his predecessor, Mayor Morrell, on this issue, and I've tried to take the advice of members of this council about the best way to help manage the flow of our meetings. We have 3 meetings a month. In fact, we created this meeting, which didn't exist previously, for the sole purpose of allowing the public to come out and talk to us without having any particular issue. And we're not changing anything, but what we're trying to do is come up with a better process to make certain that we're going to do the business of the people as best we can. So effective really at this meeting, I'm implementing as chair some updated administrative rules for the council. We're going to end the meetings at 11 o'clock. And I'm paraphrasing somewhat from the memorandum. We have had many, many nights where it is midnight, 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And while I can vouch for Mr. Malave, Mr. Tabasco, Mrs. Showmaker, Mr. Walsh, myself, we are all committed to doing this job and giving it everything we have. At some point, you lose the ability to be effective at past a certain hour. And we're grappling and dealing with issues that have enormous consequences to the community. We have to get up sometimes to go to work at 5 or 6 o'clock the following morning, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to really pay the most amount of attention to these important issues when we are struggling to really try and stay on top of our game in the wee hours of the morning. So in the absence of some emergency situation, and I'll ask the council for their advice and guidance in the event that that were to be the case, we're going to end at 11 o'clock. We do have 3 meetings, and there really should be no reason why we can't conduct our business in a way that allows us to end at 11 o'clock, which is reasonable. We are going to implement a 5-minute rule. There had been a 3-minute process previously where people could get up and they were held pretty tight to 3 minutes. We're going to try and ask people to give us their comments in a 5-minute period. And if for some reason we've got some extenuating circumstances, we'll certainly take that into consideration. But because we've got 3 meetings a month, and there are at least 3 opportunities every month for people to come out and be heard, we're going to just try and ask people to get their comments as organized as possible. And during that 5-minute period, I'm going to hold my 4 colleagues back if I must, so that we don't take away from the 5 minutes. We're going to give that person uninterrupted 5 minutes. And we'll write down whatever questions they have, and at the end of their 5 minutes, so we don't eat into their 5 minutes, we'll respond to their questions so that we can close out or at least give them updates on whatever it was they came here for us to help them with. And if we can't get them answers on the spot, as has been our practice, we'll follow up with a phone call and we'll get them whatever answers. The public comment periods are going to be an hour. We're going to stick to an hour. Now, if we're in the middle of a long ordinance hearing, obviously we have some limitations in terms of whether or not we can put lids on those.
That's open-ended, actually.
And that can be more open-ended, but I will ask people to try and get their comments out in an organized, effective way. But we're going to really look to keep that portion of the meeting to an hour. And again, we've got this meeting, which is solely intended for public's benefit. During the roll call vote, and I'm going to try and make certain that among ourselves we do this, I'm a big believer from a parliamentarian perspective that after we have closed debate and the roll is called, it's either yes, no, or abstain. We have oftentimes, and it's not intentional, and we've all done it, during the middle of the roll call, we'll go back into some comment about why we're voting a certain way. Yeah. I have read with great diligence Robert's Rules of Order, which I usually bring to every meeting just as a reference, that we need to be finished with our comments at the time that the roll is called. When the question is called.
Motion, second, remarks.
Motion, second, remarks. When remarks are finished, however long that may take, we're going to call the roll, and that will be it on comments. During executive session, we have had a great many issues. I am going to ask the manager and the clerk at the front end of the executive session meetings to outline for us in 30 seconds or less the things we're there to talk about, and we are going to agree at the front end what we're going to talk about first, and we're going to put a timeline on how long we're going to spend on each one of those items. We, as a group of 5, have to do a better job among ourselves in managing that time.
Did you have in there to start the executives at 6:30?
I didn't have it in here, but I think we have agreed that we are going to start those at 6:30, just as a scheduling scheduling provision. And I'm implementing these modifications not to in any way prohibit public comment. In fact, I believe that by implementing some of these procedures, we will have an opportunity to have more public comment in a more meaningful way, so that everyone will have an opportunity to be heard, and they'll be able to be heard at a time when we're still of a mind and faculty where we can intelligently interpret and understand what people are commenting on. So I am going to ask the public's help as we get through this as a community. We have a number of issues on every single topic. We are faced with many, many challenging issues. And if we're going to get through this, we're going to get through it together as a team, and we're going to need to be respectful of each other, and we're going to have to live by certain rules to help govern ourselves in a way that will help us operate effectively. So we really did terrific tonight in terms of the public portion. And in the 21st, I'm really going to try and hold us all to this, and I ask my colleagues up here, if I, for whatever reason, begin to wane on the administration of these rules, please remind me. Don't hit me with the gavel, but a simple reminder would be fine. We do have a meeting on the 21st. I believe it is our regular agenda night. Our budget meeting for tomorrow has been postponed.
Yes.
So the next meeting of this governing body will, in fact, be 1 week from tonight here in these chambers.
Yes, sir, that is
Is
correct.
there any other business, gentlemen?
Yes, we have the need for a short executive session.
Okay, we have the need for executive. I ask that you, I'm sorry.
Did you want to talk about the next date for a budget meeting then, since we have no?
The next date for a budget.
We would do what we normally do, is call around. We need to look at the calendar, see what's available before we
Okay.
call you.
Okay. Did you have a comment, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, I don't know about this in keeping the people to an hour. Me and the mayor, we spoke about it briefly, you and I.
You were thrilled.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not saying I enjoy getting home at 1 o'clock in the morning, but on the flip side, what 12 people are going to let speak?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what happens to 25 people put their name down? I mean, what are we going to do? Pick and choose? And who's going to pick and choose? I don't know if that's fair.
I would say to you that if we only had one meeting a month, that we would be very hard-pressed to do this. But knowing we've got 3 meetings a month, what I'm going to attempt to do is, if there is a person here that hasn't been here before, and we had a little sidebar about this, there was a gentleman who sat here at our last meeting and had one real simple question to ask. He had never come in front of the governing body previously, and many members of our community who have the good fortune of being able to be here with more frequency spoke, and many of them spoke for great periods. And this poor fellow sat until about midnight and got up and had a 30-second question, and the poor guy left at 12:30 in the morning. So what I'm going to attempt to do is go through the list, and if there is someone here on a very pressing matter, they've never been heard before, I might not go right down the line in terms of who happened to put their name first, and we're going to have to do our best, and in the event that there's some extraordinary circumstance, then we'll have to consider it.
That's actually not new. I mean, every radio broadcast, those shows that do the talk shows, they have like once-a-week rules for people to be on the air. So this is kind of the same thing as what you're saying. Give you the Mike and the Mad Dog rule here.
And I think the other thing that we have to do, if for some reason there are 4 or 5 people we haven't gotten to, then I think what we have to do is maybe the 5 of us assign ourselves to go up to that person during a break before the meeting is over, give them our card and say, we know we didn't get to you. What was it we could help you with? Here's our card. Here's our home number. Call the manager over and make certain if there was something they needed help with, that we get them help. Mr. Zanecki, you want to comment?
Before he does, I do have one other comment, too. When you have this list of people, one of the things that hasn't been followed, we should follow it. If somebody's talking about something that's been spoken ad infinitum on that night, we should motion not to hear the rest of that comment. Motion second and vote on it. Right? So, in other words, if 5 people have talked about the school and they said, it needs air conditioning, after a while, enough's enough. Get on to the next topic.
Did you want to add something, Tom?
With respect to large or complex ordinances, such as land use ordinances, what happens in some communities is they list this item as and forgive me if you've done this, I'm still learning as I go here, but let's take the hotel ordinance, for example. Now, council had made some recommendations to amend things in terms of height and other issues, and there were comments from the public, made suggestions as well. Complex ordinances like that, if they're not very pressing to get adopted, you might schedule them as an item for discussion at a work session, let's say, assign some time to it, and then end that conversation, and then keep working on it till it's to the point that you're satisfied, so then you can introduce it. This way you're only advertising once. Also, you're saving some money, but you're not sort of talked blue in the face about the same topic. You can hear it fresh next time it comes up again. So if council might identify some ordinances that are going to require a lot of public input, let us know that, and then we can just schedule time for it and then carry it over a following meeting.
That's a very good idea.
But that's separate from public comment, just,
just at large.
At large,
Yeah.
which is what Joe's alluding to. I think
That's
so
a good way to handle some of the, well, let's face it, we have a master plan that's going to be on our doorstep fairly quickly, which is going to include dozens and dozens of new ordinances that are going to have to be heard and are going to have to be vetted, and we're going to have to make certain we rely on you, Mr. Zanecki, Mr. Davis, to come up with a best process to vet those out in a way that allows us to get our other business done while still addressing those new ordinances. So maybe one of the takeaways from this is you guys can begin to think about how we're going to do that. Okay. Is there anything else? More meetings? All right, executive. All right, would you please read the, I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh. Please.
So I'm not going to be expected to vote when I haven't heard the people that want to speak.
I didn't hear what you said.
Some people don't get to speak. We're not going to vote until the next meeting?
On an ordinance, we would not be able to. On an ordinance, you cannot vote until you have exhausted the entire public hearing on that ordinance. So from a voting perspective, we're never going to vote on an issue until we've closed the public portion, or I should say the public hearing on that ordinance.
Don't confuse the public hearing. Don't confuse the public hearing with public participation, because it's two different, separate things.
Well, I just have an issue, period. I mean, I've heard up here many times, the resident is the client.
That's right.
And we're in a service business. Now we're telling clients to shut up.
No, Mr. Walsh,
come on, we're telling clients you can't speak.
Time out. I have to tell you.
Help me here.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to make it very easy. I have for 4 years said that residents are our customers. That's who we work for. At the same time, we have to have a methodical process upon which to do our business.
Yeah,
And we cannot, at 1 o'clock in the morning, be deliberating on matters of major significance to the township. We've got to have some parameters around how we govern ourselves. I got here tonight a few minutes early. I didn't have an opportunity to have dinner. So I had dinner in the office. I was returning some residents' phone calls, and there happens to be a television set in that office that I inherited from my predecessor. So I clicked on television, and I happen to be one of those unusual people, yes, I'm unusual, who put on C-SPAN. And what do I come on to C-SPAN but a live debate on the United States Senate floor? And the members of the Senate were debating a topic, and it had to do with port security. And they were yielding to one another the amount of minutes that they had left. The gentleman from New Hampshire yielded 2 minutes from the gentleman from New Jersey, and the gentleman from New Jersey ran out of time, and so the gentlewoman from Virginia, gave another minute. But the takeaway was they had a set amount of time upon which to articulate their comments, and they followed their rules. And they did so. I was amazed at the respect they had for one another, even though they were on totally different ends of the argument. But they worked within the parameters that they agreed as a body that they would use to govern themselves. We are going to be absolutely committed to listening to all of our customers and listening to all of our residents. I don't think it's unreasonable that we ask people, to the extent it's practical, to give us their comments in as organized a way as possible. And in fact, if we need to hear more commentary from them, we should ask for their phone number and call them back. We should set up a time to meet with them in person. I talk to residents usually 7 days a week. They call me at home. I meet with them here in my office before and after meetings. This is one portion of the job. The way to hear from your customers and the way to talk to the public is to be open and accessible to them on more than just Tuesdays between 7 and 1 in the morning. So I don't view putting some rules and parameters on how we're going to try and have these meetings as in any way being or setting up prohibitions to the public. I just look at it as a way to make certain that we are doing the business of the 52,000 people.
That's the point.
Who also can't always be here, but expect that we act in an organized, efficient, and effective way, and that we make ourselves available 7 days a week, not just the first 3 Tuesdays. So we're never going to not listen to our customers, because that's who I work for.
I have one last comment, and then I'll stop completely on this topic, but you hit the nail on the head right there.
What happened to the 5-minute rule?
Go ahead, Pete. I think she's kidding. She's teasing. She's teasing.
I'll make sure it's less than a minute and a half. But that's the big point, that the 52,000 people that we are elected by expect us to be at our best when we're making decisions for the town. So we need to be at our best, and we need to put in rules that let us be at our best, because they're not all here. That's exactly right. When what we're talking about limiting is not the ordinance discussion, but public comment on at-large topics. If on an at-large topic we have a number of people all saying the same thing, at some point we have a right to shut it down so we can still do the business of the 52,000 people later in a coherent way. That was my point before. So I understand what Bobby's saying. We shouldn't really shut anybody down, but that's not true. If a topic that is an at-large topic has been beaten up enough, or we can make a decision on it, and it's not an ordinance-type decision. We made a lot of decisions tonight on things in 3 minutes. We shouldn't have to have an hour's discussion on stuff that's already in our heads, something we can decide on. That was my point. So, and I think the main point is right on, that we do represent 52,000 people and are expected to do our best. We can't be asleep when we're trying to make big decisions.
Mr. Davis, would you please read the appropriate statement for executive, sir?
Yes, sir. Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public should not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting, and whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statute 10:4-12, namely litigation and acquisition of property. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and the Township Council will not reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
We need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any remarks? For the benefit of the public, we will not reconvene after we are finished with executive session. So I'm going to ask that after the roll call on executive, we have a motion to adjourn. Roll call on executive, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, motion to adjourn, please.
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out, folks.